Hayom Yom Yutes Kislev. So first of all, today Yutes Kislev is by far the most important and significant day on the Hasidic calendar, and really the most important and significant day on the Jewish calendar and in human history. So first of all, Good Yom Tif and L'Shana Teva, B'Limena Chasidus, V'Darchei Chasidus, Tikasevu V'Sechasema. Now there's a lot of little details in today's Yom Yom, so we'll go through it piece by piece. So in the year that Yom Yom was published, Yutes Kislev fell out on Shabbos Parshas V'Yishlach. So the Rebbe begins by telling us that it is our custom that on Shabbos Parshas V'Yishlach we read for the Haftarah the book of Evadia, which begins with the words Chazon Evadia, not like other Ashkenazim, which read a Haftarah from the book of Esheya on Shabbos Parshas V'Yishlach. Second, the Rebbe tells us is that since Yutes Kislev is a Yom Tif and therefore we don't say Tachton on Yutes Kislev, therefore when Yutes Kislev falls out on Shabbos Yutes Kislev, we don't say Ein Eimrim Avarachim, we don't say the Avarachim prayer before Musaf, and we don't say the Tzidchaska prayer before Mincha. Because any Shabbos that were at a weekday, we wouldn't say Tachton, and we don't say those two paragraphs either. Next, the Rebbe tells us, and the Rebbe reminds us to do the daily Chitas, the daily Chumash Tehillim and Tanya, which at the beginning of every single Hayom entry, the Rebbe tells us and reminds us to do that day's Chumash Tehillim and Tanya, that day's Chitas. And next, the Rebbe tells us that many communities have a custom that by Mincha and Ma'ariv, the Shliach Tzibur, the Chazan, puts on Italis out of respect for the congregation to bring more prestige to the service. But the Chabad custom is that Ein HaShliach Tzibur Mes'ativ Italis Mincha and Ma'ariv, the Chazan does not put on Italis by Mincha and Ma'ariv, Lei B'Shabbos V'Yom Tif, Lei B'Rosh Hashanah, never, not even on Shabbos and Yom Tif, not even on Rosh Hashanah, except for on Yom Kippur, when everybody wears a talis the whole time, so then of course you wear a talis. Then the Rebbe tells us, why is Yutes Kislev so special? Why is it so significant? What actually happened on Yutes Kislev? And the Rebbe shares with us how two major events happened on Yutes Kislev. So first of all, Yutes Kislev is the Hilula Shel Harav Magid Mezrich, Gimel Vayeshev Tov Kuf Lamed Gimel, Umenuchase Kaved Ba'anepoli. The great Magid Mezrich, the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, Dever of Mezrich. So he passed away today, Yutes Kislev, in the year 1772 on a Tuesday on Shabbos Parshas V'Yeshev, and he is laid to rest. His holy resting place is in Anipoli. And I'm not sure why he passed away in Anipoli and not in Mezrich, but he passed away in Mezrich, and that's where he's buried, and he's buried there till today, next to the famous Reb Zusha of Anipoli. Then years later, the Alter Rebbe was arrested in an insidious plot hatched by his opponents, and they had him arrested for treason. And then today, Yutes Kislev, Admor HaZaken Yatza L'Cheres M'Maisarei HaRishon, the Alter Rebbe was released from prison today, Yutes Kislev, in the year 1778, from his first arrest. Now, a couple of years later, there would be a second arrest, but that is the content of the Hayom entry of Chav Zayin Kislev, about the second arrest. But the first arrest, the release from the first arrest, was today, Yutes Kislev 1778, and it happened on Gimel Vayeshev Tav Kuf Lamed Gimel, Yutes Kislev Gimel Vayeshev Tav Kuf Nun Tes Lifnei Erev. It happened on Yutes Kislev 1778 on a Tuesday again, on Shabbos Parshas V'Yeshev again, and it happened towards the end of Yutes Kislev, towards the evening of Chav Kislev. And that is that. Those are the two major events that happened on this day. Now the Rebbe shares with us a letter which the Alter Rebbe wrote after being released from prison, a very famous letter which he wrote to the holy Rebbe Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev about the arrest and the release. And he writes as follows: Memichtav Rabbeinu Zaken, the following is taken from a letter of the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe writes, B'ram ki geinda tzarech lehedia, the following must become known and the following must become publicized. Ki yoyim asher asa Hashem lanu yom Yutes Kislev, this day which Hashem has granted us and created it for us and made for us, this amazing, incredible day of Yutes Kislev. So there's a lot of incredible symbolism, a lot of very positive symbolism, a lot of cool things have lined up, which shows you what a significant and powerful day this is. So first of all, this day of Yutes Kislev happened on Yom Gimel Shehochel B'Ki Tev. It happened on a Tuesday, and that is extremely significant because Tuesday is one of the most positive days on the week. Tuesday is one of the most powerful and positive days on the week. And where we see this is in the account of creation. So by every single day, it says that Hashem saw that that day was good, it was Tev. But on the day of Tuesday, it says twice Tev. Hashem saw it was doubly good. Tuesday is an extra good day. Tuesday is an extra powerful day. Tuesday is an extra positive day. And therefore, it's extremely significant and powerful that the release of Yutes Kislev took place on a Tuesday. Additionally, the release of Yutes Kislev took place on Yutes Kislev, which is Yom Hilula Rabba Shel Rabbeinu HaKadosh Nishmas Yedin. It happened on the day of the passing of the Magid Mezrich. And it's extra significant that the Magid Mezrich originally passed away on a Tuesday, and this year it happened on the passing of the Magid Mezrich on a Tuesday as well. And third thing, says the Alter Rebbe, and a very significant thing that happened is Ukshkarisi b'Sefer Tehillim b'Pasuk Pad v'Shalom Nafshi Koidem she'eschalti Pasuk Shel Achrav Yitzasi v'Shalem Hashem Shalem. While I was in prison sitting and reading Tehillim, so he says I was in the middle of reading the Pasuk and Tehillim of Pad v'Shalom Nafshi, which says, Hashem, please save my soul, please redeem me, please free me. And before I had begun the next words, literally while I was saying those words, they came in to free me. The God of peace, Hashem Shalem, freed me in a peaceful and smooth manner. And that is what the Alter Rebbe writes. Now, obviously, what's very cool is that pasuk of Pad v'Shalom Nafshi, so on the way that Tehillim is divided on a weekly cycle, that is in Tuesday's section. So that's part of the alignment here. Now, a few interesting things here is, first of all, the Rebbe once mentioned what's interesting is that clearly it's significant that the Maggid of Mezrich passed away on Shabbos Parashat V'Yeshev, and the Alter Rebbe also was freed on Shabbos Parashat V'Yeshev, because when we saw everything was lining up, he passed away on Yom Kislev, he was released on Yom Kislev, he passed away on a Tuesday, he was released on Tuesday, we said he passed away on Shabbos V'Yeshev, and he was released on Shabbos V'Yeshev. But for whatever reason, in this letter, the Alter Rebbe chose not to mention that detail. Now, a thing which is explained a lot in Hasidus, which we're not really going to get into now, is that the concept of Geula and the concept of freedom is very connected with the number 3. And that's just part of the symbolism here, that the Geula of the Alter Rebbe, the freedom of the Alter Rebbe took place on Tuesday, and it happened with the Alter Rebbe, which is the third Rebbe after the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid and the Alter Rebbe. That is that. Now, another interesting thing about the connection between the Maggid of Mezrich and the Alter Rebbe is the Frierdiker Rebbe once shared how on Yutas Kislev 1772, when the Maggid of Mezrich was on his deathbed, so he took the Alter Rebbe's hand between his own, and he said that today Yutas Kislev is the Yom Hilula of me and you. It's both of our Yom Hilulas. And that expression, Yom Hilula, literally means a celebration or a wedding, and it's usually used to describe the passing of a tzaddik. But the Maggid of Mezrich said that today Yutas Kislev is the Yom Hilula of me, and it's your Yom Hilula as well. And nobody really understood what he meant until 26 years later to the day, on Yutas Kislev 1778, when the Alter Rebbe was freed from prison, then everyone understood what it meant. And the Frierdiker Rebbe shared then how a certain great Chabad Chassid was once for bragging about this, and he said that the 26 years between the Maggid of Mezrich passing and Yutas Kislev of the Alter Rebbe, so that represents the Shem Havaya, God's name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the numerical equivalent of 26. And the Chassid concluded that the Alter Rebbe showed the way of Yichudi Ilah. And that is what the Frierdiker Rebbe shared. Then the Rebbe puts a line across, which means now we're kind of starting a new piece. And what's very significant is that the first 4 letters of the first letters of the first 4 words of the next piece spell out the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hashem's name Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is A, probably connected to what we just mentioned, but B, the Rambam in the beginning of his major work, his magnum opus of Yad HaChazaka, so he, very famously, the first 4 letters of the first 4 words, Yesod HaYesodis V'Amud HaChachmos, spell out Yud Kei Vav Kei, spell out Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. And the Rebbe is kind of mirroring that here in his own work, which is very interesting. And the Rebbe says, now that we know what happened in Yutas Kislev, what are we meant to do in Yutas Kislev? How do we act in Yutas Kislev? And he says this is what we do. So first of all, Yutas Kislev is a Yom Hisvadas V'Kabbalas Achlatas Tevis V'Kvias Itum L'Teira Haniglas V'Dach B'Rabim. So it's a day to Farbrengens, it's a day of Farbrengens. And it's the day to take, in these Farbrengens, to take commitments, to take public commitments to study more Torah, to study both more Chassidus and more Nigla, to study all areas of Torah, to increase in the learning of Torah. And then additionally, V'Chizuk Darkei Chasidim B'Avas Reim, to do and to commit to do anything you can to strengthen the ways of Chasidim in a brotherly and friendly way. And then additionally, says the Rebbe, Noigim L'Sader Chalukas Hashas, V'Al Pi HaSeder HaMavur B'Yigeres HaKedesh Ramaskal HaCheach Tichiach. So there is a part in Tanya, there is a letter of the Alter Rebbe, which begins with the words HaCheach Tichiach, which is actually the closing letter of the entire Tanya. It's the closing of the entire Tanya. And in that letter of HaCheach Tichiach, the Alter Rebbe talks about how every year Hasidim should divide the entire Shas between themselves. Every community of Hasidim, every Nash community, every Chabad community should divide the entire Talmud, the entire Shas between themselves. And over there he lays out how to do it. He basically says that either people should volunteer which tractate, which Masechta they want to take, or they should just do it based on a raffle. And the Rebbe says that we follow that letter. We divide, every community divides the entire Shas between themselves. And he says, though, it is our custom that when do we do it? We do it on Yutas Kislev. Yutas Kislev, we divide the whole Shas based on the way the Alter Rebbe laid it out in the letter of Echech Tichiach. And the Rebbe says that Bilabavitch Mishnas Tafrei Shamach Gimel Ve'elech Hayu Misadrim Chalukas Hashas Chaf Dal B'Tevis Yom Hilula Sharabeinu Zakin V'Pnei Efes Apnai B'Yutas Kislev. Now he says always Chabad used to divide it on Yudis Kislev, but in the year Samach Gimel, in the year 1902, Yudis Kislev 1902, they changed the custom because in the year 1901, the Rebbe Rashav wrote a very famous letter explaining what Yudis Kislev is really all about, just what a powerful day it is, and that letter is actually printed right before the entry of Yudis Kislev. And after Hasidim got that letter in 1901, so the next year, 1902, when the Rebbe Rashav was back in Lubavitch, that Yudis Kislev was crazy, and the Frierdiker Rebbe writes different things they did to celebrate, and it was a crazy, crazy Yudis Kislev. They celebrated like never before, and therefore they were so busy and they were so into the celebrations that there was no time for anything. There wasn't even time to divide the Shas, and therefore it didn't happen in Yudis Kislev. And they decided the next best time to do it, the best time to push it off for, was a little over a month later, was Chaf Dal Tevis, which is appropriate because Chaf Dal Tevis is the passing of the Alter Rebbe when the Alter Rebbe passed away. And then they started dividing it from then on Chaf Dal Tevis. Now, in the year 1952, Yudtes Kislev Tafshin Yud Gimel, the Rebbe explained that the reason why it was appropriate to move it to Chaf Dal Tevis is not just because Yudtes Kislev is about the Alter Rebbe and Chaf Dal Tevis is about the Alter Rebbe, but he says more than that. Yudtes Kislev is about when the Alter Rebbe got free from prison. And Chaf Dal Tevis, which is the passing of the Alter Rebbe, so that captures the same thing because Chaf Dal Tevis is about the passing of the Alter Rebbe, and passing is when the soul is freed from the prison and confinement of the body. And therefore, that's very appropriate. But then, at that actual Farbrengen, the Rebbe said, from now on, we are switching it back to Yudtes Kislev. We are switching it back to the original custom, and right there and then, the Rebbe had them divide the Shas by the Farbrengen. And since then, it has been the custom, back to the original, to divide the Shas on Yudtes Kislev. And just what's interesting is the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe themselves used to partake in the division of the Shas. And almost every single year, the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe would take the tractate of Sanhedrin, Masechta Sanhedrin, because it talks about how to be a leader and how to rule and how to govern, and therefore that was very appropriate for them as the Nasi of the Jewish people. And that is the Hayom Yom. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.